This is the Crush Crowdfunding Podcast, the #1 place for people who want to launch on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. My name is Nalin, and I invite you to join me for tips, hacks, and insights to get you launched and fully funded. Welcome to another episode of the Crush Crowdfunding Podcast. Thanks for tuning in today, because today I really want to talk about the fact that we all need a little bit of help sometimes. So now that I am living in Seattle, Washington, I'm living in the US. I'm actually originally from Thailand, but now again, I'm in the US. One thing that has really bugged me is the myth of the entrepreneur, the myth of the sole entrepreneur, the founder, the one person who, against all odds, can fight every obstacle and bring their company and their business to success and bring their product to life and make all this a reality. And it kind of bugs me because it doesn't talk a lot about this myth, this like mythic in American society, in US society, in Western society, oftentimes doesn't talk about the fact that we all need a little bit of help sometimes. You know, like myself, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I've started my own business with Crush Crowdfunding, and, you know, I'm spinning off a second business right now. And I'm going to be completely honest and say that I don't do all this by myself, right? I don't do this alone. I have people who help manage the day-to-day operations. I have people who help and kind of work on the content, massage the content. I have people who help edit my podcast, the one that you're listening to right now. I have people who help edit this, and I thank them. I thank them so much for helping me get through all this, because it takes an entire village to run a business, to launch a product, to launch a project, to make an idea come to life. It takes an entire village. And so, yeah, I really shun the myth of the sole entrepreneur just kind of pushing this rock up a hill until they get to the top and they, IPO and make millions or billions of dollars, because it takes a village. And I really want to talk about how it's okay to ask for help and how it's okay to really need to get help from a lot of people, from a lot of places. Okay. And so that's kind of the premise of starting this particular episode of this podcast, is that we all need a little help sometimes, and it's okay, because there's no way that you can do everything by yourself. There's no way that you're an expert at everything. Just to use myself as an example again, I don't know how to edit videos. I don't know how to edit podcasts. I don't know how to effectively create content for the right social media channels at the same time, right? I don't have that expertise. What I do know is that there are people out there who have that expertise, and there's people out there who know how to get these things done. And so I make sure to bring them on so that they're able to complement my expertise in crowdfunding and help me get the message out to people and help me help more people and help me help other people succeed, right? And so again, there's no shame in asking for help, and there's no shame in asking for people to help you on your journey to launch on crowdfunding, because the little secret is that everyone does it. No one goes it alone. Everyone has help. Even the biggest entrepreneurs, even the most successful crowdfunding campaigns, all those $1 million crowdfunding campaigns, all those $1 billion companies, the founder did not do everything themselves. They always had help. They always had a team, or they always had people pitching in with their time, or pitching in with their money, or pitching in somehow just to help them make this a success. So when it comes to your crowdfunding campaign, don't be afraid to ask for help. If you need help with graphic design, if you need help with marketing, if you need help with reaching out to press, if you need help in creating a video, if you need help in anything, don't be afraid to ask for help, because there's help out there, and there's people who are experts in what you need and in the crowdfunding niche, and these people can help you succeed, right? So that's kind of the premise of That's kind of how I'm going to start this particular episode, because I really wanted to talk to you about crowdfunding agencies. And I know crowdfunding agencies are not for everyone. A lot of the time working with a crowdfunding agency requires a lot of upfront budget, right? A lot of upfront budget, because what essentially happens is that you have this idea and you kind of give them your baby, pretty much. This idea baby. And then they take your idea and they just run with it. They run with the marketing, they run with the photography, they run with the videos, the GIFs that they create, they run with the tone, the copywriting, they run with it and help you bring this idea to life. And so again, it's not for everyone, but it's for some of you who are listening out there. And so a lot of people have reached out to me to ask about this. So I decided to really do a podcast about this because one, there's no reason to go it alone if you don't want to. And there's no reason to go it alone if you're struggling and having such a hard time doing some things. There's no reason to go it alone because two, there are people and experts out there to help you. The great thing about being in the crowdfunding business and the great thing about doing what I do right now is one, not only I get to work with you, the amazing entrepreneurs that with all these crazy ideas, but two, I get to meet a lot of brilliant people who, like myself, help others launch and run successful crowdfunding campaigns. And as you can imagine, since crowdfunding is $1 billion industry, okay, not even a billion, multi-billion dollar industry, multiple billions, right? This is a large industry. So since it's a multi-billion dollar industry, there are a lot of agencies out there that you can work with when it comes to crowdfunding, when it comes to launching a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign. There's a lot of agencies to reach out to and that potentially could help you launch if you want that type of help. So from my perspective, I've worked in an agency. I started off working in a crowdfunding agency. I've worked with different agencies around the world to build up their crowdfunding processes, to build up from the ground up their processes of like intake, of project management, of launch and outreach. I've helped agencies build that up. I've also been on the client side and worked with an agency to launch crowdfunding projects and just kind of had them help a little bit in the launch process and see what that's like. So needless to say, I've had a lot of experience with agencies myself, a lot of experiences even working with agencies now as a crowdfunding consultant, because I'm not going to be the first one to admit this, but I can't do everything myself. I will help you launch to the best of my ability. And sometimes that means to onboard, a partner agency or an agency that you want to work with so that we can best work together and mesh all our expertise to make sure your project launches to the market in the best way possible and to get you the funding that you need to make your idea come to life. And so with that said, I have kind of a varied experience with agencies. And so I wanted to really look at this from kind of a potential customer perspective. If you are considering working with an agency, I believe there are 3 different things to look for as a potential customer. And I want to kind of really dig deep into that today, since some of you out there listening have been toying with the idea of working with an agency and have been toying with the idea of getting help for your project and for your launch. And I want to really address that. So what's the first thing? Number 1, you have to really understand what kind of projects the agency is working with or likes to work with or prefers, because every single agency out there has a different expertise. Yes, they all work with Indiegogo. Yes, they all work with Kickstarter, but there's very specific expertise that they bring to the table. Some agencies mostly work with campaigns that are hardware tech that launch on Indiegogo. They specialize in that. Some agencies work with campaigns that are on Kickstarter and only during the campaign phase. Some agencies work with products that have a sustainable twist. Some agencies work with only apparel projects. Some agencies work with only board game projects, right? So there's so many types of agencies out there, and there's no one size fits all at all when it comes to an agency. So when you're really looking at what kind of agency is out there, make sure to look at what kind of projects that they're working with, what categories they work in, and also what platform they work in. It's really important because one, they'll actually know the ins and outs of your particular product and of your particular niche, right? They'll have all the connections that you need, all the people that you need to know for your particular niche. There's no reason to work with an agency that works in hardware tech on Indiegogo if you're trying to launch an apparel project on Kickstarter. There's no reason to do that because that's not where their expertise is. right? Another reason that's really, really important is that it kind of determines how much time they'll be spending on you. It determines how much time they'll be spending on your project. Think of it this way. If the agency is partnered with you and another project that is within their niche and within their specialty, and one that has a large working budget, they'll probably be spending most of their resources on that other project rather than on you, because one, they're more comfortable with that industry than in that particular niche, in that particular category, and they're less comfortable with you, so they're less kind of versed in what to do and how to go about launching your project. So you want to make sure that you're working with an agency that will put effort into your project. And it all starts off by matching the type of expertise that they bring to the table with the type of product that you want to launch and the type of audience that you want to be gathering for your particular campaign. Again, there's a lot of agencies out there, and you have to make sure that the one you want to work with and the one that you end up working with is focused on your particular type of niche and your particular type of product. The second thing I really recommend you to really know before going into an agency relationship is what communication will be like throughout the working relationship. This one's really important too, and a lot of people don't think about that. Myself, as a crowdfunding consultant, one of the key things I look at when I'm trying to decide if I want to work with a project or a product or an entrepreneur or not is literally if we'll gel, if we will honestly love talking to each other every single day of the week and love chatting with each other on Slack or on WhatsApp or on whatever other chat platform there is. I really look for that, because if the communication flows, if the communication is easy, if the communication is two-sided, if we're able to have a conversation, if we're able to disagree and agree and brainstorm and work together in this way, then the working relationship is going to be very smooth. The working relationship will be one of respect, and one where we can trust each other on what we're doing and where we're going with the project, with the campaign. Because at the end of the day, I want to make you succeed as an entrepreneur. And so again, that's what I look at when I'm trying to determine who to work with when it comes to crowdfunding. So what communication will look like for you and your agency is really, really important when you're trying to really decide, right? Especially if there's like the last two proposals left on your table. What communication will be like is very important, because some agencies treat creators and entrepreneurs like partners. You know, here, in this type of relationship, things are researched and they're recommended to you, and you kind of take it in and you discuss it, right? On the other hand, other agencies kind of take the route of my way or the highway, that kind of approach. So with these types of agencies, you just kind of give them your idea and they just run with it because they know what's best. They test the market, they figure out the audience, and they just kind of do everything for you, and you just sit back and relax. They create your tone, they create your emails, and you sit back and relax. So you can probably figure out what communication is like between these two extremes, right? The companies, the agencies that do the discussion versus the agencies that kind of take the my way, the highway approach. So there are agencies that are on each side and all along this particular spectrum. So as a creator, as an entrepreneur, as someone who is working to launch this idea that you have and you've been working on for years and months, determine what you're comfortable with, because whatever the type of communication is towards that beginning phase is really what will happen throughout the duration of the campaign and the duration of the pre-launch. And be sure to ask probing questions about this, because if you love to discuss and brainstorm and go back and forth for hours on an idea, but the agency is looking for more of like, hey, give us your idea and be hands off and we'll figure this out for you. If there's that disconnect, the working relationship won't be great. Right? The working relationship will break down from both sides, and things will just turn sour really quickly. So before you go in, just make sure to know what communication will be like throughout the working relationship. The third thing and final thing that I really think that people should take into account when working with an agency or when deciding which agency to work with is what the agency does when projects they're working with do not meet the ideal goals that were initially set out. So let me say that again. You need to really make sure that you know what happens when your goals aren't reached, right? What happens with you, what happens with your agency, what happens with the relationship, and just what happens in general when you have a $100,000 goal and by day 18, you're still at $50,000. What happens, right? From my perspective, it's what agencies do in times of crisis, in times of this type of crisis. Like, hey, if you're on launch day and everything breaks down and the email marketing isn't sending out, the ad accounts aren't working, and the video is not playing, and the page is down, and Indiegogo's down, and Kickstarter's down. It's what agencies do in times of crisis that really, really matters. When it comes to this, some agencies just collect their retainer or their upfront fee and leave you high and dry. It's unfortunate, but this does happen. If your project doesn't take off as planned, some agencies just really leave you and kind of do as minimal work as possible just to keep the project going and kind of keep the relationship going. It's really in their best interest to do so, since putting resources into a dying project typically does not make the best business sense, especially since a lot of agencies have structured their particular contract by taking a percentage of what you raise on crowdfunding. And if they see that the project isn't taking off as planned, they're going to kind of just back away, because at the end of the day, they won't get as much revenue from that particular project, and the agency won't be able to, and navigating resources there won't be the best in their perspective. However, the truly, truly classy agencies will stand by you, their client, and do whatever needs to be done in order to turn the project around, right? Maybe it's revisiting the marketing channels after collecting the preliminary data. Maybe it's revisiting the type of creative to better work with the audience. Maybe it's revisiting the positioning of the project to become more relevant. Whatever it is, an agency that's, one of the good ones will actually do that and work with you to make it work, right? And so before you go into an agency relationship, before you sign a contract, before you sign anything, make sure to ask about the worst case scenarios and ask for examples. Ask for the worst case scenarios that's happened before in their working relationship. Ask for the worst case scenarios that has happened before when it comes to launch, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to audience creation and testing and finding and helping with communications. Ask about the worst case scenario and ask how they dealt with it, and ask how this all happened, because this will help you determine, if things don't go according to plan, like, how do people react? Because I think that when things go awry is when you kind of see people's true colors, and getting to the bottom of this before you actually sign a contract will be especially really helpful in case things do go sour, in case things do just kind of end up not going according to plan. So again, these are the three things I would really recommend anyone to look for when they're out looking for a potential agency to work with. One, what kind of projects do they currently work with? Is it in your particular niche? Is it in your particular category? Two, what communication will be like throughout the working relationship? Because everyone works differently. Everyone has a particular style, and everyone gels with different people in different ways, right? When it comes to communication. So make sure to ask that. And three, what happens when things don't go according to plan? What happens when things kind of hit the fan? What do they do? Because knowing all this, knowing these three things going into an agency relationship, you'll be way more comfortable, because you'll be in good hands, because they're going to know the ins and outs of that particular category. You'll be in good hands because you'll have a great time talking every week with your agency to hash out different ideas or get reports. And you'll have a great time knowing that if things don't go according to plan, there are ways around it, and there are ways to really work together to turn things around. So at the end of the day, if you need help figuring out which agency to work with, if you need help just understanding who has what kind of specialty, if you need help figuring out like, hey, I have this type of product, which one should I actually get in touch with? Who should I know? Who should I talk to? If you need help in any way to figure out which agency to work with, feel free to get in touch and we'll figure it out for you and figure out who the best fit is for you, for your working style, for your product, for your budget, and you can be well on your merry way. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Crush Crowdfunding podcast. If you found that this episode was useful or helpful, or this podcast was useful or helpful in any way, I would really appreciate leaving a review so that other people will be able to also find this podcast more easily. Thank you, and I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Crush Crowdfunding podcast at crushcrowdfunding.com. Tune in the same time next week for more ways to crush your launch.